Hello, and welcome to the Annie Altman Show, the podcast, Season 4. Welcome to Podcastukkah, Episode 7. The Annie Altman Show projects are Field Me Search for the Humanity, an interactive stand-up comedy musical philosophy show from the perspective of a human named Annie. Hey, it's me. The Humanity is about how no one ever fully figures out how to human, how there's 10 C themes of the human experience connected by the C theme of connection, and how openly discussing these themes is part of maximizing resource equity and minimizing human suffering. Today, I'm here talking about how storytelling can help us remind each other, with Lucy Hartman. Thank you so much, Lucy, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I love you. I adore you. I was excited when you asked me to be here because being a storyteller is one of the main ways that I identify, and I think specifically as a queer storyteller is, a really big identity that means a lot to me, and it's a central part of who I am. So I'm excited to be here chatting with you about storytelling.
I love you too. I'm excited you're here. I really appreciate your manner of storytelling, and so this topic felt really natural to talk about with you, given your openness to receiving stories and your openness to sharing your truth. And as I was saying, this podcast used to be called True Shit, swear as much as you want.
Yeah, I'm good
it's
at
still
that,
the premise.
So, yeah.
Fuck shit down.
I don't have a problem with swearing, as you'll see.
Share a little bit of an introduction about yourself and what you like to do.
I am a storyteller, as I mentioned. I'm an actor, director, writer, artist of all kinds. I use Instagram, I would say, as a medium for my art. And I'm also right now, how I pay the bills is commercial acting. So you can find me in your nearest T-Mobile store in the holiday campaign. And you may or may not see me in a Toyota ad once in a while. And that's right now sort of what I'm doing. You
do storytelling through a lot of different mediums, which is cool. Short and long.
Yeah.
Performance, food, talking.
I mean, I think everything's a story. I think what we're doing right now is a story. And I think that every story has ways that it could probably be better told, So something might be better as a piece of Snapchat art, and it might be better as a photograph, and then you can go, you know what, this was a really great photograph, but I think I could do a stand-up routine about this. And I think you can also offer yourself differently to every story. I think that's one of the things that bothers me a lot about Hollywood is the roles seem very set. Like there are directors and there are writers and actors, but I think that everybody's talents can lend themselves differently to stories. And for one story, you might be better directing it, and one story you might be better acting in it, and you might be just better on the sidelines for another story. You might not be able to offer yourself very well as a storyteller. I'm actually working on an indie film right now called Hi Pretty, and I'm acting in that. And one of the cool things about doing indie is that the roles are very much bent. Like, we're all actors, but we're also all working to fundraise it, and we're all pretty much producers as well. And so I think as a storyteller, doing indie projects is like one of the coolest ways to connect with all sides of helping a story get told. That was,
Yeah, there's so much in there. Well, First, the part about... My mic is so loud here. First, the part about storytelling as a form of art, and art having essentially infinite mediums and ways to do it, to be it, and it being a form of expression. Yeah. I really know that one very strongly, and that's part of doing a podcast and talking to people from all different backgrounds, is that everyone has a story. Everyone is a storyteller. Everyone is a creator in some way.
Absolutely.
And it is interesting to see how along the spectrum of different ways things are made, that people can blend and overlap roles in more ways. And like you were saying, offer what they're good at and be really, to me, the word teamwork comes up, and working, or the community C of working together as a community rather than having such specific and isolated roles of this is what I do. the flip side of that with, industrialized society is that people specified their roles more and more and more and got really good at one thing. The part that then I agree that can get lost is people communicating more for that C between how a story gets told, and having the flexibility to say, wait, maybe this person will actually be the most beneficial to this project if they're directing and they're involved in the editing process because they were there for the directing, and that will help tell the story more effectively.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of the fun things about being a college dropout, which I am.
Woo!
Is that I think a lot of times people don't necessarily take you as seriously in some respects, and you have to kind of be a jack of all trades in a certain way. So I think that's been really fun for me. I think that it's awesome because I am not a person that wants to just get good at one thing and keep doing it. I was actually part of a movie, my first movie ever. I got to do a sex scene in my idol's movie. Her name is Mariana Palka, and she's one of the girls on the show Glow. And she called me and was like, will you fly down to Alabama and do this sex scene? And I was so nervous. It ended up being totally fine, and we got it in one take. But, oh my God, I totally forgot where I was going with that. Anyways, it was a great movie, and what had we just been talking about
being involved in multiple roles of storytelling or different parts of the process of it?
I think it just...
just different opportunities for it?
Exactly. She actually was cutting the movie and editing the movie as it was happening, so she was very involved in that process, and the moment that they wrapped shooting, the movie was done, because as they had been filming the movie, and this never really happens, it's like usually you film a movie and then there's months afterwards where you edit it, but after every scene that they would shoot, she would edit it right then, so that the original intent that she filmed it with was really captured in the way that they cut it. And so when we wrapped shooting, the movie was done.
Whoa.
And
What?
I thought that was such a cool way to tell stories, because it's like when a director is shooting something, they're shooting, with a certain way in mind, a way of telling the story, and you may have shot from a certain angle, and then when you're in the editing room months later, you might go like, I'm not really sure what I was picturing there. I just thought that is the coolest thing. I wish everybody did that, because I think you can really tell when you are watching something that feels connected to the people that made it.
The connection,
Yeah,
it's
for real.
Part of storytelling, connecting us. That's the remembering for me. That's so cool that you got to be part of and see a process that's so different from
it was so
what other
cool.
And why are we not experimenting more? I
feel like money, that's why, I think
you're
experimental stuff is so
Yep.
hard to fund. Right now we're trying so hard to fund this film, and it's a queer story, and I think I look out and I don't really see that many queer stories. Like when I look at Netflix and I'm trying to watch an LGBTQ film, they're all just dreadful too. They're all the most horrible, tragic situations.
I don't want to watch this.
Yeah, where it's so-and-so's life completely falls apart. Coincidentally, that's also the movie that I'm making. But I think...
The hero's journey.
Yeah, I know, right? But I think, it's so hard to get money for things that you don't normally see. It's people want to make the same stories because they know that it works.
And they know that it working means there's money in it. Yeah.
True shit.
Yeah. A story that we are watching unfold in real time is how people relate to money changing on a big scale, and how art and money are related changing on a big scale because of all the different ways people are able to monetize their own artistic projects or online businesses and other sort of coaching, or there's so many ways now that people are making money and fundraising for things, and I feel like that is connected to this shift in, from my perspective as well, people making art that feels more connected because they're making it from a different intention. When the intention is money, I believe that gets reflected. I feel that coming out in in art. It's like if something's forced in any sort of life thing, we feel. The true shit is that humans have sensitive bullshit detectors. So if something's forced, we feel it.
Yeah, 100%. I think, oh God, that's the thing with like social media these days, is it has such a beautiful power to like really affect people, but then there's also this superficial side. And I even sense it with like my own social media, like having a few thousand followers, and it's like, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, should I post this photo because people will like it more? Or should I, you know, it's like walking that line between really having something to say and doing something just for popularity so that you can maintain your platform so that you can keep having something important to say. You know what I mean? Like, I want to get more likes so that I can maintain my platform and ultimately have a positive impact over people, but not have everything I do be very preachy.
It's an important point to bring up too, of what stories we choose to share on social media and what our intentions are for sharing them and how we put ourselves out there because of what we're intending to gain from whatever it is we're doing.
Yeah. I always find that thing really interesting where it's like, I always had this thing with myself where it would be like, oh, I won't really share how I feel and what's true for me until my platform is big enough.
Like X number, and then I'll
like wait until this point to like, you know, till I actually have a platform to really share how I feel. And there's always, I mean, for everybody, I think we are always postponing being honest and real and true until we're secure enough for that to be safe. And the reality is being vulnerable is very unsafe. It's unsafe the entire time.
It's built into the process.
Yeah, but it's you can also get really hurt. And so I think that's something that I'm working on, is like how can I tell my truth now? How can I, you know, speak my truth now, because I think other people want to hear it too.
Yeah, and what are the resistances that come up to telling it? And security is such a big one of, I'm unsafe if I share this.
Totally.
And in talking about queer storytelling, how while it is safer now than it has been, it is still a less safe space than sharing some sort of heterosexual love story would be. And I was going to say catch, and that doesn't feel like exactly the right word here. The strange cycle of it is that in order for that sort of storytelling to get safer, more people have to do it.
I think what's also scary is, especially about queer storytelling, and I was just thinking about this and now I really haven't thought about it previously, but there are so many straight cis stories out there and so many like bad ones. But I think that my feeling about like this next movie that I'm making is like, it can't fail. It can't fail, because if it's going to be important in our community and important to people, it has to be like foolproof. It has to be perfect. The acting has to be perfect. Everything, you know, we have to have enough money to really tell the story. The cinematography has to be perfect. And there can't be anything wrong with it. There's nothing about it that, you know, can not be like 100. And I think that is one of the fears, is like when you're in a marginalized group that especially isn't put in the media very often, the things that then do sort of start that pathway, there can't be anything wrong with them. Otherwise it will turn people off to the entire group of people trying to tell the story. You know, if our story reaches a certain crowd and it fails, it's going to predict how that group feels about any stories that come out of our queer community. And that is like really freaky, you know, when one thing can come to quantify the talents of an entire group. And that's what happens with marginalized people.
It's another layer of intensity of the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because of that condition of a situation that's already less safe to begin with.
Yeah. You don't want to fail for yourself, but you especially don't want to fail on behalf of like everybody that your image represents too. So it's stressful.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot more pressure because of telling stories that haven't gotten as much of a platform yet.
Yeah.
And then that inherently putting more pressure on how the whole story goes.
Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy, and I feel like that's part of where storytelling is a reminder of lightness and connection and all of the cliches that are true of us being all in it together.
Yeah. I mean, that's the exciting part of storytelling, I think, really, is those moments of making people laugh or feel like they've come home in a certain way. Like that, for me, is what is important about storytelling, is making people that on some level feel that they are at home within themselves or within a story or a moment in time or a feeling, you know.
Is home to you related to security and safe? Like giving someone that sense of safety?
Is
it more like
necessarily
peace?
know. I mean, I think there has to be some sort of satisfaction involved, but probably, I don't know that it's necessarily security. I mean, for me, like, I would say watching The L Word last week was like a really big moment of like feeling at home, because the only time that I've ever really seen people that look like me on TV is in Orange is the New Black. And as an actor, that's really stressful, because it's like, is that what I get? Like, is that my one place that I can go? Is this, you know, this one show? Like, okay. But watching all of these queer people and all of these lesbians that kind of look like me more or less and identify like me, on screen, I felt like at home for the first time. For that hour, I just felt at home. And I think, so for me, in a certain sense, maybe it's feeling secure, maybe it's feeling represented. I think you can satisfy people with stories depending on what they need in the moment. And what you might get out of a story in one moment might be totally different than what you might get out of it another. Like, have you ever like watched a movie the second or third time around and been like, whoa, I totally needed this story in a different way today, and it hit home in a different way? And that's the freaking cool part, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Part of the connection becomes being able to revisit that story, that piece of art, and being able to talk to other people about their experience with it, no matter what's the same and what's different about how something was interpreted, to get to talk with someone else about a show or a movie or music that you like and connect over that as well.
I think music's a big part too. Like thinking about
movement.
Sometimes you'll hear different songs and I'll be like, oh my God, my junior year of high school when I fell in love with my best friend, like this really brings me back. You know, songs really store memories and they help us remember different periods of time. And then also sometimes you listen to a song and it'll be like, maybe you used to associate it with a breakup or, you know, a friend or an experience, and then you hear it again and it totally resonates in another way. I'm so obsessed right now with Harry Styles' new album. You're giving me that blank stare that shows me you haven't heard it.
No, and I've listened to a couple of his more recent things. Okay, on my
it's called A Fine Line. It is so good. This album makes me want to just like slap myself to make sure that I'm real and that I'm here.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Am I still a human?
Which is not an urge that I normally have to slap myself.
It's like punching something because it's so cute. Like that sort of a... Yeah.
I just want to eat you. Yeah.
It's weird how wires get crossed.
It's mine are all sorts of fucked up.
Everybody's. That's part of sharing our stories about what happened with your wires. What are you doing in your detangling process? True. Here's what's working for me. Oh, that's interesting. That works for you. Yeah. That's how I view it.
True. That's really true.
Yeah. What else are we doing? But someone said to me once that when we're talking about our lives, we're swapping survival tips.
Honestly, yeah.
And sharing music or movies or any of that is some piece of that too, to really reduce it down.
Yeah. Wow. That's Owen Wilson's favorite word. Wow.
Wow. I like his storytelling style.
Of what? Of being incredible?
Yeah, I like incredible storytelling. Yeah. I like storytelling that I like.
Wow. He's so great. He's incredible. But I'm really going to think about that. That's like some Audre Lorde shit.
The reducing down to survival tips?
Yeah.
You know, I don't... What I feel most confident in knowing about storytelling right now is doing it.
Yeah.
and listening to it, which is to me different side and of doing it. And well, there's so many unknowns in not getting to choose how something's going to be received by people. People are still necessary, and the sharing of the story is still necessary, if for nothing else than the fact that I literally feel unable to do anything. Not feel, it's beyond feeling or thought in some ways of a knowing that says do this.
Yeah.
And
That's really cool, that because I think you've given up a lot to be able to be a storyteller.
Oh.
And you are giving up a lot to be able to be a storyteller. But one thing to remember is that, like, I know a lot of people who just, like, kind of passively float through life because they don't actually know what they're passionate about. And I don't know what that's like because I've always known what I'm passionate about. And it's always been very overwhelming because I felt like I've been passionate about so many things. Like, I had, it was like when I got a camera, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And then when I started doing theater, I was like, wait, no, this is it. And then when I started, taking videos, I was like, wait, what? And then I, became in the slam poetry club, and it was just like all these different things. And it wasn't until Casey Neistat came and spoke at my school, and I realized that all of that could be under the roof of calling it storytelling and identifying as a storyteller. And I think some people never really have something that they love, that they would give everything up for. And it's really cool to, like, love something so much that you just go, I literally don't know where my life is. I'm going to totally throw away all feelings of safety because this thing is so important to me, and the gratification and safety that I can get from that is more than the sum of these other things combined. Like, that is so powerful, and that is so beautiful, and we should just be really thankful. I think we're so blessed to love something at that type of depth. That's how I feel, at least.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
That was really real. I needed those words so much right now. Thank you. Yeah, and the privilege of it, and also acknowledging the choice of it. And thank you in this moment of you coming over and me sharing my current life crisis mode of moving and selling all of my stuff and starting a new job, doing all the things I can to do Podcastukkah and send out the humanity script and these things that feel that are necessities right now, and acknowledge rather than shame myself for being obsessive or being determined and stubborn and making it all these stories about me being bad, and that sort of like shame versus guilt, and shame being I am bad and guilt being I did something bad, and letting myself acknowledge my own being human through that excitement of caring about connecting and sharing, and opening up to the vulnerability of not knowing how this podcast will be received, how anything will be received.
For real. I mean, one of the things that you said, I don't think we were recording, but when we were talking before this, you had described something as both your strength and your weakness. And I think that is like such a cool way to give yourself grace, is to understand that, like, these strong traits that we have. Like, I think I'm really, really sensitive, and I understand that sometimes that is really helpful for me, and then sometimes it's not, because I think it causes me to, like, maybe sometimes even feel things that aren't really there and create a whole story about how a person might feel about me, and then I get so lost in that world that I have kind of left reality. And then I think there's other times where it really allows me to feel into what somebody else might be going through and assist and be there in a way that maybe other friends might not have the capacity to be there. But I think understanding that it's not all one thing, that, in some situations my sensitivity is really great, and in other situations it's not as helpful. Like, that's really cool. And I think also how I think about my sensitivity is really important.
How you relate to that part of you. I like that you use the word grace for it. That I feel that one of allowing it and accepting it, and saying, this is who I am. I am a sensitive person, and so this has pros and cons to it, and what you have the capacity to do is to alter the stories you tell yourself about your sensitivity.
100%.
Because if you're sensitive, you're sensitive.
I mean, look at Jennifer Lawrence. She fell at so many different award shows on the red carpet. But you know what? That bitch got up and she turned into a fucking meme.
Fall down 7, get up 8.
And
embraced it. Yeah, embraced the being human.
When I was running in high school, when I was running for this thing called SERB, which is the Student Interview Recommendation Board, and we got to help hire prospective teachers coming to our school. My campaign posters were like this photo of me falling at like 5 years old, and then it was like Lucy Hartman falls down 7 times, gets back up 8. Anyways, that just brought up, I wish I could display the picture right now because it's such a grandiose way to fall is the way that I was falling.
And that's the reminder of storytelling to me, is everybody falls, and what you get to choose is if you get up or not.
Yeah.
For as cliche as that is, once again, cliches are based on something.
I mean, the past is the past, and trauma is trauma, and our experiences are our experiences, but the only thing that we can really control is how we react to all of that.
And keep going. Because your sensitivity, for example, for that one part of you is going to keep going with you into the next experience. Yeah. And just, I mentioned the hero's journey for just a split second earlier, of this circular going in the underworld and learning and coming up a more human. And the part that stays is your essence, your internal Lucy-ness that comes with you with a little bit more knowledge and experience around again.
Yeah. That's interesting. I always am like, what is my internal Lucy-ness, And
who am I?
Yeah, I'm like, what is there something really essential about me? Like, was I born with some sort of spicy goodness that I'm taking through yes, it just felt like the right thing to say, Are there essential things about me that I was born with, and then what of me is being shaped by my experiences? Like, I'm, I don't know that I can answer.
The nature-nurture connection.
Yeah.
There's still,
dude.
Yeah, epigenetics.
Fact.
Do you believe there's an essential nature to other people? Like, if you look at other people, think of people you'll feel, people you love. Is what you love their essential isness?
I think it's different for everybody. I mean, I think there are some people where what I love is probably a little bit more surface,
Totally.
Yeah, you can like love the way that somebody acts in a group and not necessarily be like, I love their innermost soul. And I think for like my very best friends, I really do know that part of them, that like deep thing. But I think not everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And what I'm getting at more is that if that part exists in someone you love very deeply,
then it has to exist with everybody.
She says with like resituating in the chair.
I actually wrote a report on this when I was like, I did like a thesis from high school, and it was like 35 pages. And and I wrote a big report on this, and it was like honestly one of the greatest things I've ever written. But about it was about basically like the essential self and the existence of magic. Whoa. And
yes, I want to read this.
I'll send it to you. It's really, I think it's pretty beautiful. But about how sure all of these things happen, but I do believe that ultimately we are born with some spicy goodness. And is
that going to be a cookbook title in the future? Just plugging that now. Popped in.
My cookbook.
Your cookbook.
TM.
Yeah.
Copyright.
I didn't mean to derail your going of we're all born with spicy goodness.
No, I think that was it. Yeah, TM. I think that was it. We are born with spicy goodness.
And then our storytelling is sharing that spicy goodness in different ways.
Facts.
And different people are going to want to in different ways. Not everyone wants to do a podcast. Not everyone wants to do music.
That's really true.
That's like you were saying about how blessed we are to know what we want to do. And remembering to be grateful for having avenues of storytelling that feel good.
Yeah.
To me, it's really similar to having ways of movement that feel good to me. And my perspective that everybody has some form of movement that feels good to them when in some way they are able and interested to do, and it's figuring out what that is.
Interesting.
Yeah, like dancing, walking, cleaning, you're moving, or anything that moves your body. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it could be an organized sport or something.
As a Virgo, I would say cleaning would really
be the
the
stereotype.
movement of folding, like it's so weird. Sometimes my girlfriend, she'll get home and she'll be like, what do you want to do? And honestly, all I want to do is watch Mrs. Maisel while I fold the laundry. That is what I want to do. Like, I just want to, like,
grounding.
I want to take things off the hanger so that I can put them back up again.
And just, like, nest and settle in.
Yeah. I want to make a color-coordinated pile of things, and I don't want to be sorry about it.
Amen to, organization is so soothing to me, too.
Yeah, I used to be a personal organizer.
Cool.
That shit is for real. Helping people put the things in the drawers, figure out which drawers they go in. Ooh. Color coordinate the socks. Yeah. We went there, folks. We went there.
This is like the nature-nurture cycle where your environment does impact how you feel.
Oh, I'm a big believer in environment changing everything. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why your one-woman show is not just a one-woman show. Every person in the audience plays a character and contributes to how your show goes. As a performer, that's how I feel like when I'm up on stage. The temperament of the audience is a big contributor to how my performance goes and how I'm reacting to what I'm doing.
Live art is it's communication just in its nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking before recording about me saying the big story with the humanity that I've come to when I was reflecting on doing this podcast topic with you, is that it's been about how to put myself at the center of my experiences and also remember that self at the center of my perspective needs other perspectives to do or be anything. And not only just inviting people on for the podcast, for the show performance, both doing it and having people there for a live performance. That life is not a one-woman show.
What do you think about the tree falling thing? Like, if the tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, did the tree fall? Did the tree make a noise, or whatever the fuck that is? What do you think about those questions?
So good. Whoa. Was not expecting this question to come on this podcast. It's fucking amazing. Will you share your thoughts? Will you start while I still reflect?
Oh gosh.
I want to say yes and no, which isn't a real answer.
I mean,
there's still sound waves that, like, if they're not received, are they bouncing off other trees? Things need to be received.
I'm a big believer that the tree still fell, and there was a sound, and the sound was really important even if nobody was there to receive it. And I think for me it ties into intent versus outcome a little bit. Like, I know a lot of people who believe that, like, if you just, like, if you go around intending the right things, even if something else comes of it, like, it's not really important because your intent is what was important. And I don't believe that at all. Like, I don't believe that intent really matters at all. Like, I could intend, something and actually accidentally end up hitting somebody, and really what matters is that I hit somebody and killed them. I can go around being like, I didn't mean for that to happen, but it's like, that's,
you don't think there's any change,
type of apology when you get an apology from somebody about them fucking up, and the whole time they spend it going like, I didn't mean, where it's like, of course you didn't fucking mean for that to happen, but it's sort of not important. What is important is for somebody to go, this thing happened, and though it wasn't what I meant, it caused this reaction, and that's what's important, and I'm so sorry for my involvement in that. I think a lot of times people are like, I wasn't involved in that at all, but it's like, if your name gets involved in something, or your image, or whatever, some part of you gets dragged into something, it is important, and it's important for you to go, you know what? I was involved in this thing, even though I didn't mean to be in. I am really sorry. So, I don't know, in a certain way it ties into, if a tree falls and nobody is there to hear it, to me, it's similar questions, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, what I want to say now is that the tree makes a noise. The noise doesn't have an impact. The impact of the noise is different because as sound waves need something to touch. If there's not a animal life form there, then it's only impacting the other trees there. Like, now I'm just being like, well, what are the contexts of the question here? To me, I do believe know in my experience that intention makes an impact, and I find intention to be relevant, and to only focus on intention to me is my extremist brain, and that discounts reality where impact does make a difference. To go to the extreme, like you brought up, of hitting someone with your car, your intention does nothing to whether or not that person got hit and that happened.
Right. I think of it a lot in terms of I think cancel culture, you know, which I think is a really negative thing. I don't really support, you know. I think people can make mistakes, but it's like if you take Kevin Hart and like his homophobic tweets, I think, you know, when somebody goes, oh, the culture was different, or like, oh, you know, today I wouldn't have said that and I didn't mean it that way. It's like, just like, you know, that's kind of just like, don't even go with that. Just go like, you know what? I did this thing and it ended up hurting people, and for some reason, the fact that he for some reason thought it was okay is so irrelevant to the fact that people got hurt by it. And so I think about it a lot with those things, is like when something is dug up from somebody's past, how people deal with that. And I think a lot of times it's like, oh, well, my intent. And it's just like, oh, yikes, you know? I think in a lot of cases, intent really, to me, it's just irrelevant.
In terms of how people move forward, the impact has to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
In fact, I find that not acknowledging the impact creates more harmful impacts.
It's a big problem, yeah.
Yeah, and to connect that with cancel culture, I feel like that's part of what comes up where canceling someone doesn't work. Like it's the same as canceling an inner part of yourself. If you were like, I'm going to cancel my sensitivity, or I'm going to cancel my OCD part. Those aren't options. You can't like cancel someone from using the internet.
I think it honestly is just a thing that people do so that they can have less to focus on, so that they can tune something out. Because I think now with the internet and everything, we are so, like, everything is so saturated that it's like, oh, if I just choose to unfollow Kevin Hart and not even let him be a part of anything I ever focus on again, then it leaves less movies for me to have to watch and all of these, less things for me to have to interact with. Then I think it just frees up space for people.
Because we can curate the stories that we're exposing ourselves to a point.
Yeah.
It is weird. It's a really new phenomenon.
Very new. Yeah. I mean, I don't support it at all. I think, when everybody should be able to make mistakes, even if immortalize them on Twitter.
Yeah, the yes and here is that if you don't want to follow Kevin Hart, for example, or whoever you don't want to follow for whatever reason, then it's like exposure therapy to a point. Yeah. You don't need to constantly be putting yourself in discomfort. Yeah. It's what that line is between acknowledging that story is still there. To me, this is another, like, me getting on a preaching about human existence where everyone's feelings are valid, and what the actual fuck do we do when everyone's feelings are valid? It's valid that people were hurt by those tweets, and it's valid that Kevin Hart's like, fuck, I fucked up, and my PR person's telling me to say this thing, or not even acknowledging or aware of what happened, and people aren't aware of what they're needing to feel safe again, to come back to safety. And it's like such a fucking clusterfuck.
Validity culture. Creating a new thing here, ladies and gentlemen.
Validity culture. A culture of feelings validity.
Yeah
Honestly. Not acknowledging them doesn't work. From someone who has done that, been there, tried it, would not recommend. It's just gonna come up stronger, whatever the thing is.
Yeah, I think we are in such an interesting moment though, where everybody's like, it's hard to see everybody's feelings as valid, but I think now in like the liberal circles, it's like people are so busy seeing everybody's feelings as valid that it's like almost difficult to figure out who feels anything about what.
Yeah, it's like we're like going to the other pendulum swing of too many feelings to deal with.
Yeah, feels like an SNL skit, in all honesty. Sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, because how do we, for the cliches again, or the idioms of making space and holding space, we're coming into new questions about how to do that both tangibly with basic resources and housing and food, and also emotionally to come to storytelling and representation of different types of stories, how to have space for storytelling that reflects the actual human experience and population.
That's really true. And I think what's cool is I feel like people often think that there can be like a limit about stories, but stories and the importance of stories like that doesn't have a limit. I think
the limit does not exist.
Yeah, and I think people often think that about positivity and the amount of positivity that they can give, where it's like, as if love is just some well that will eventually dry up if you give too much of it. And that's actually not how it is. If you live a life that's like free of judgment and free of like getting frustrated by little things as much as you can help it, you actually have like an endless renewable way to do that. Love and positivity are renewable sources, and people forget that. And I think they think the same thing about stories, that like one group might tell one of their story and then it's like, oh, okay, well, you got your story. And I think we all deserve endless stories. We all deserve to tell as many stories and have some of them suck and, fuck up and keep doing it.
Yeah, the abundance versus scarcity mentality.
Yeah.
And how that's connected to fear of failure or stagnation because of feeling like there isn't space, or like if that space is taken, it'll fail, quote unquote, in some way you'll fall down.
Totally.
Yeah, that there's a attributed to Buddha quote that says a single candle can light 1,000,000 candles, and the flame, I'm paraphrasing, doesn't get any dimmer.
Damn.
Happiness doesn't diminish being shared.
Like that's sort of the guiding principle of my life for me. Gosh, I was listening to a podcast this morning with Dax Shepard.
Shout out.
I love that man. And he was talking a lot about religion, and with one of his guests. God, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was a great podcast. And Dax he's an atheist, and the guy is Christian. The guest was Christian, and so they were talking about just like the importance of religion in the guest's life, and him really feeling like the presence of God helps him be better to other people and helps give people forgiveness and be kind to people in situations where he might not otherwise want to be, stuff like that. And Dax was saying that's really interesting because I feel like I don't need God as a presence in my life to feel like that those things are the right thing to do. And I just think that I am kind of with like where I land on that is sort of more closer to where Dax is. But I thought the way that religion plays into that topic of like how can we light other people's flame, whether it's through storytelling or something else, I think religion plays a heavy hand in a lot of times why people feel the urge to share with others, whether it's kindness or whatever it might be.
Damn.
Yeah. Do you feel like religion plays a part in
that? Part of my damn about it is that I've gone through, I used to, people would say the word God, and I would essentially shut down from actually receiving anything else they would say or really acknowledging their perspective in a real way.
Yeah.
And then I would say to the other extreme, or my version of it, of really hyper believing everything had so many layers of meaning and it was all messages, or it's all like really being obsessive about, well, wait a minute, there is some perspective bigger than mine, and what does that mean, or how does that play into my life, and what the actual fuck again.
Yeah.
I've always, for the big connection, see of the humanity and my perspective, my essence, my whole conscious existence have felt very connected to, have experienced this deep knowing of a faith in human connection.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from any sort of creator or rules in a written form, all of that aside, a very literal, tangible sort of, what I know is that there's a bigger perspective than mine, and that there's more that happens when I talk to someone else, when I interact with someone else, that there's more that happens when 10 people get together, or 100 or 1,000 or tens of thousands of people, that there's power, for that word that can be taken negatively at times, that there's power in that connection, and that it is by its literal nature a higher, larger, bigger perspective than anything I can see from my own one perspective. As kind of touched on from other things, I have also fallen into the camp of then focusing on that perspective more than my own, or focusing on other people's perspectives more than my own, and figuring out what that line is to walk between those. I think
that's the journey of life, really, is to figure out how to balance your own needs with other people's. And I think we're always like going to be somewhere on either side of the line.
Yeah, and religion has come up throughout all of history, and in so many different ways, as a way to remind people of that. And I love that, like, sharing that being brought up, because that's a big question I have with religion is, well, wait, why do people need religion to tell them to be nice to people, to tell them to treat other people how they want to be treated? Why is that religious in its nature? And how does that come out in storytelling, or how is art perhaps spiritual in its own sense?
I think that, like, I don't know what it is, but I think we naturally are born with some, maybe it's evolutionary, some bit of something that tells us that gossip and judgment, is helpful and can be helpful in some situations. And probably in an evolutionary sense, it is, right? Because it's like, oh, you might know that somebody's not being a very good member of the team and isn't,
if they're
helping
doing
the
that
pack very much. And so you might want to tell somebody else. And I think, like, ultimately probably it started as some sort of evolutionary thing that could better a group of human beings living together. But I think ultimately what people forget is that, like, being kind is actually just as easy as being unkind. And I think some people feel like being kind, it takes this whole lot of effort, but it actually, like, feeds the soul, and it actually feels really nice. And I think that when you're unkind to people, or purposefully judgmental, or even just sort of standoffish, it doesn't end up feeling good at the end of the day. This is something I think about so much, where it's like, why is it that we need to believe in some sort of higher power, whether it's like a god or a celebrity or something outside of ourselves, to feel like the force of kindness and the ability that we have to use it for good is not renewable. And I think in years past, before I moved to LA, I wasn't really surrounded by a lot of religious people, I feel like. And now I've kind of become in circles with people who are really religious, and that's a big force in their life. And I think similarly in years past, the word God was kind of alarming to me, and it just would stop me from listening immediately. And now I feel that I can talk about God and have God mean my own thing, which is just sort of my set of beliefs, which is I believe in angels, I believe in miracles, I believe in love, I believe that we're all connected, and I believe that that connection is something that's way higher than ourselves. I believe that there are things that we can't see, hear, smell, touch, sense that are existing all around us that contribute to what's going on. And I believe that there's more out there than what we could ever know. And so to me, when people talk about God, I can talk about God and feel that impending sense of connection to all of those things. That's what God is for me. So it's like I can go to church with my friends on Sundays if that's what they want to do. And when they talk about God, I feel that I'm connected to what my sense of God and understanding of God is, no matter if it's not a white man in the sky.
Jesus was not white either.
Yeah, what is the deal with that? He was probably a very dark brown man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Wow, that was beautifully said.
Yeah, and I think for me, storytelling really is the ultimate, appearance of God in my life. It's the way that I can translate what I feel God is and give that to other people in the way that I know how.
The connection to connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's hot shit.
Yeah, this is some true shit of being here. Like, what else are we doing here?
Yeah.
And through being open to receiving a story that is more religious than it sounds like you are, more spiritual,
mm-hmm.
and still being able to receive that story and connect with your own spirituality, your own essence, your own feelings, your own whatever word you want to put in for your existing in a moment.
I almost studied religiosity in college.
Religiosity?
Yeah, they
That's
had
the first
a
I've
major
ever heard that
called
word.
Religiosity.
What does the osity mean there?
I don't know, but they called it a religiosity major. So, I started taking all these classes on secularity, which is just the absence of religion, and then they had a whole major about it, and I started to I think that was like my transition into this phase, was like reading different religious texts and realizing that, I could take from these things what I needed, and there were some things where it just gets too into a nitty gritty where I could be like, I don't know that I can find a way for this to serve me, but there were some really big things that I feel like I could get down with, and I think it helped me just open up to life a little bit more, because everybody's got different viewpoints, and I think we all have to figure out a way to live with one another and to take parts of each other and accept those things as being another person's beliefs, even if they're not ours, and figure out how to move forward with that. So I think it was ultimately helpful in just figuring out coexistence.
How to navigate being a human around other humans.
Yeah. There's a Chelsea Cutler song called How to Be Human.
Can you sing a little bit of it?
How to be human. I don't know how to be human. I don't know what I am doing. Something like that.
I love that. Nobody knows. We're all improvising all the time.
Yeah. That's pretty much what the song is about. It's not a very good song, honestly, but
at this moment it's
sorry,
very relevant.
Chelsea, if you're listening. I like your other songs. She's very talented.
Sharing the stories.
Yeah.
That's part of it too. Not everyone's gonna like every story. Someone will. Someone loves that song.
100%. And that someone is my girlfriend.
So together you two are giving the whole spectrum of extreme responses to one particular story told.
Yeah. No, we are perfect is what I heard you say, and that is true.
It would be boring if everyone liked all exactly the same things.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Like you were saying about it'd be boring if everything worked out all the time.
I mean, you need to have, like, sometimes shit has to really suck.
What else are you gonna tell a story about?
No, that shit's really good when it's good. Like, plain and simple.
Yeah, all the things about darkness and light.
True.
It's the walking the line about
blowing their horn.
In agreement with this
They're like,
topic.
toot, toot.
Darkness and light.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's navigating. For me, navigating if I'm spending too much time in one or the other. Generally too much time in darkness, I feel, because to again go to a Buddhist framework for one religious framework about how to navigate not knowing how to be a human, that a lot of our suffering comes from avoiding and neglecting to acknowledge the suffering and anticipating and avoiding it.
Coming around. Yes. What is meant for you is really meant for you, and I think if you don't acknowledge it and if you don't really go on the journey with it, it's gonna keep coming. And sometimes you are like, oh, I am working my way through this. I am being so good. I am really dealing with what I'm facing. And then you're hit with another level and you, once again, are sort of told that you haven't been fully dealing with it. And you have to face it in yet another way and peel back another layer.
The onion.
True. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough stuff.
Nothing goes away until it teaches you what you need to know. Pema Chodron.
Yeah.
I'm just putting out quotes because that's my level of
relying
on inspirational quotes. Part of that's where my journey is right now. That's where my journey is right now.
That would be like a funny idea for a character. Is like
only says inspirational quotes.
Only like for the entirety
right
of
now.
Like a series, like never their line is always a quote from somebody else.
That's so deep. They don't say their
in
own.
An office.
Yeah.
I feel like that coworker where like, you're like at the fax machine scanning something, what the fuck ever people do at a fax machine, and then
we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really meta character label. It's so meta because it's like, why is this character not sharing their own words and their own thoughts?
Yeah.
Because of vulnerability and storytelling and being in a position to do that. And that would be a hilarious sitcom character.
It really would. Do you ever make vision boards? I think that would be a good exercise to like really dive into making a vision board, because I think people might shit on vision boards, but I think they're really powerful because it only really works if you completely free yourself to admit what you genuinely want and to make like a collage about it. So whether
make an
what
art
you
project
want is like a bunch of money or a fancy green couch, whatever you want to attract yourself, like it only really works if you are super honest with what you want to attract and
your intention.
Yeah. True.
Nudge, nudge.
True.
Does that imply that there's some higher something that knows whether or not you're being honest with your intention?
I don't know, but I think that
you're higher.
You know, and if you know that what you're putting out is not like, here's the thing, like if you ask for half of what you want in life, you will always get half of what you want or less.
Ooh.
And that is a big thing. Like that's my biggest piece of advice to myself all the time and to others. But also because I'm trying to take the advice that I give to others more as my own advice.
The advice we give to others is the advice we give to ourselves. Some
things, like big things in life, are really hard to ask for. And so you end up kind of just going, oh, I'll just have, that but a little less. I'll just ask for what's a little bit easier. And you're only at the very most going to get that thing that you asked for or less than that. So just try to ask for the full fucking thing.
It's like breadcrumbing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think from the universe, all the time we're asking for things. And I think really go for it.
Do you feel that that's connected to storytelling as some way of asking and or communicating what our wants and needs are?
Yeah. I think what we ask for is a story that we tell about ourselves. What we're asking the universe for. That becomes a story in our minds about who we are as a person in this phase of life. And the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are like the most important thing. If the story that I'm telling myself is that I'm kind of a failure or that I can't do something, I'm gonna fucking believe that story. And that story is gonna end up panning out to be the story of what actually happens to me, because we really believe ourselves when we tell ourselves stories.
Yes, and your actions will reflect your beliefs. So you will make
100p.
decisions in... Yeah, this is where law of attraction stuff has a
I'm a
tangible
big law
base.
of attraction person. Yeah. I really feel that.
Line yourself up to what you want.
Yeah.
Feel the feels.
100%. I mean, if you for a moment tell yourself that you can't do something, what's the fucking point of even trying? Like, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. There are going to be people all over this world that are going to doubt you. Mm-hmm. Don't be one of them.
Yeah, I had a friend who said you got to be on your own team.
Yeah.
I also had a friend who said we are the stories we tell ourselves. I'm really going in on the quotes. My only pushback to law of attraction is from a religious, Buddhist, lots of different religious perspectives, which is that there is some sort of suffering. For me, the phrasing I put it is that doubt is part of faith. That like darkness and lightness sort of stuff. That
there's kind of a fight and a pushback.
Yeah, the to me where I have resistance to law of attraction is people who talk about it in a sense of just keep believing, just keep telling yourself this thing. And to me, it's like that, in my experience, has led me to neglect and not give space for it. It's like cancel culture on my own doubt rather than saying, hey, doubt, what is here to learn? What do I learn from you? And how do I remind you that you're okay and safe, and focus on that I am allowed to have faith in myself to validate my own feelings.
You can have a goal in mind and really be attracting that thing. But I think where you're tripping up is believing that every part of your journey towards that goal is going to be positive. It's not. You know, if my thing that I'm attracting is that I'm financially stable and having I have a home, I have a job, I have just because some really negative and horrible and difficult things happen along that journey doesn't mean that it's not coming for you. It doesn't mean that you're not attracting it, or that you're not on the totally right path towards it happening. And I think you have to shed that belief that if something bad happens, the thing's not coming for you. Because it is. And I think every time something bad happens, I'm like, oh, interesting. So this is how I get to the next step. That's interesting. Okay, what do I do with that? Let me picture, because I think if you don't see those negative things that happen as part of the journey towards the positive thing, when the positive thing actually comes, you're not going to recognize it when it happens. Because you're going to be too tripped up on feeling like something negative that happened got you thrown off your journey. And I think we oftentimes think that the positive thing that's going to happen is coming in a certain package where it's going to look like a certain thing and it's going to be all happy hitty-ditty when it gets here. And oftentimes it's like in the face of something really horrible. And I think the trick is how to see that horrible thing as a really exciting part of your journey that's going to lead you to the next piece.
Damn.
So I feel like it's not just keep believing. It's being like, oh, although this is hard, this is how I get to the next step. And it's challenge.
The horn again agreeing.
Yeah.
That there is positivity in the negativity.
Yeah.
The yin yang symbol. That it's all a part of it. Validating that.
Yeah.
And also the part I want to underscore of what you said is, and this is where faith and connection in these things, I feel in a quote tangible or more describable way, is trusting in things that you can't see, or any things like you were saying with senses, and also trusting that the lack of something currently existing or being there is different from the lack of that thing existing at all.
I'm in full agreement with that.
Full agreement.
I love that.
Yeah. What in your, would you say that has been your perspective for most of your human journey, to have that curiosity for that sort of approach to things happening, that sort of, what do I get to learn from this, win some, learn some? Yeah,
I would say there was this thing that my parents always used to tell me about when I was little, and that it was pretty much until like a certain age, I would wake up every day, and at some point during the day I would go, this is the best day of my life, just because I'm like a really excitable person. And I think when people meet me, I still do that. Every day I have a reason to say this is the best day of my life. And because that naturally happens for me a lot, that's great. But I think some days they don't start out in a way where they feel like it's going to be the best day of my life. And I feel like it's really good to feel every day like it's the next best day of my life. And I just believe that every day you have to go out and find the reason if it doesn't come to you. So if by 2:00 in the afternoon it hasn't been the best day of my life yet, I have to go out and do something so that I can find that reason why it could be the new best day of my life. That could mean sitting at a coffee shop with somebody and complimenting their shoes and having a small interaction that changes the course of my day. Ultimately, I think it ties back to connection. But
so beautiful.
Yeah, I just realized that it's really good to feel like every next day is the best day, no matter if there are some bigger, scary things happening over a period of time. I sort of treat finding every day as the best day, like as a separate thing from the bigger overarching themes that I might be experiencing, and it helps me live a really good life. So I think that's the way that I've always thought about life. It's not always easy, but I always do it.
It always keeps happening.
Yeah.
I know that I'm still here.
Yeah.
Choosing to focus on the light.
I also really like routine, so.
So my routine is to say every day is the best day.
Yeah, and to mean it, I think that's important.
I'm curious if that's part of a root of your storytelling, and part of what you put out as a storyteller is to infuse that feeling into other people.
I think I do. What I want to do is make other people feel like it's the best day of their lives, or to at least do everything I can to make that feeling more readily accessible for people,
to remind them about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this film that I'm working on, because it is a really traumatic queer story. It's a true story, but the character that I play in it is the character that really brings glue and levity and light to a situation that's filled with a lot of tension. And I'm really excited about that. I'm also nervous that I'm playing a real person who's going to be on set for the filming. But it's cool that she existed in this story in real time.
And you get to talk to her about expressing part of her story.
Yes.
Whoa. Cool.
Whoa. Nerve-wracking. She's going to be an extra, and I'm like...
I'm playing you.
Hey.
Yeah. We're both you, sort of. Not really.
Which one of us is you? Yeah. So I'm really bumping the mic. I'm really excited about that. To get to play that character, to tell a story that is traumatic and true and really important is really cool. But to also get to play a real source of light and love and positivity and sexy goodness. Is it spicy goodness? What did I say?
Spicy before.
Yeah, spicy, sexy goodness, whatever.
Same difference.
That is going to be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm still just thinking about the person who you're portraying being an extra on the film.
I'm thinking about that too. All the time. Oh gosh. I'm you now.
You're a part of them. You're an expression of a part of them.
Yeah.
Just gets too meta too quickly.
Yeah, really true.
It's like talking about it is helpful to a point.
Yes.
And then what is the story there?
Yeah.
Or maybe like where's the magic of the story? I like clearly taking things apart. To me, that is part of the magic, is really looking at how something's put together.
Dude, same. I love to watch roundtables, like Hollywood Reporter roundtables, where it's like you get a bunch of actors or creators or animators or directors, showrunners together, and then they talk about kind of the guiding principles of what they made and why, and
the intention,
the outcome. everything.
The whole story.
Yeah.
The story of the storytelling.
Yeah.
I feel like humans, it's just this is a nature nurture thing where there's some part of human nature that really seems to be a storyteller. To me, to go back to religion, it is another story. I mean, however you believe in the truth of it, it's using story to connect us and remind us. Stories are how we connect. Yeah, I feel like, giving people statistics or some huge number of where our brains, I don't feel are set up to process. It's like how grief is very different on a small scale versus hearing a huge statistic of something feels very different than seeing an up-close video of someone's life and quality of life because of something happening. Yeah. It's like, maybe it's that it's too heavy to hold statistics, or that they don't feel human. Yeah. Whereas a story, we can sit with it. Yeah. I just get thinking so much about social media because I feel like we now more than ever are sort of more isolated with the existence of social media, but then our actions on social media just show how badly, how deeply we want to connect with one another. Totally. I feel like that about social media for sure. It just shows us wanting. Yeah. And then do you feel like it's because we have that, then people seek out in-person connection less? Because they can get a type of connection through that? Maybe. I certainly don't, because I feel like they're different kinds of connection. Yeah, in-person connection is I thrive. I need that. And I do a lot of connecting over social media for sure. It's definitely a tool that I use, especially being in this industry. It's a really helpful tool. But I think that's ultimately what it is a tool. And but I think that for people that probably aren't as socially comfortable, social media makes a lot of things really easier to connect and to be involved with connection. And to find where the line gets really blurry is to find in-person connections through social media, through people or through finding events that you see posted somewhere. Yeah, I'm in this butch group that's I just found it by accident, or some stranger added me to it. I don't know how I got in it, but it's all of these older 50s married butch women that wear plaid shorts and go golfing, and me, and pretty much it's everybody being should I wear this sweater vest for work with this tie? And everyone's saying fuck yeah. And everybody being I support you fully. And fuck yeah. And is this on Facebook or where? It's on Facebook, and there are butches from all over. And they just love this shit. They eat it up, and I think that it is so fun because I can spread the message that everybody should be wearing Vans. My duty in this group is to, I feel help in a fashion sense connect these older butches with what is really truly cool right now. Here's the trends from this generation. Yeah. So I don't know why I feel that is my duty, but I have really become connected to that idea. And so anyway, sometimes they have meetups where it'll be anybody in Florida. They're all fucking in Florida, by the way. How did you get in this Florida group? I don't know. I rarely use Facebook, but all my notifications are from this butch group. But anyways, yeah, it's a great way for those. I think they really love this group, and they count on the connection that they get. For that community to find each other and stay in contact. To really have shared experience. And to go, sometimes people will come to the group and be the other week somebody said this thing to me at work and didn't bother me in the moment, but then it started to bother me, and has this happened to anybody else? Is there something I should do about this? In what way can I acknowledge it? I think a space to tell the story. It's a space about storytelling fully. People will say, oh, that happened to me, and I whatever, and here's what I did about it. Really cool. It's but a nice reminder. Sweater vest, wow, what a choice, Just saying. Gotta express your innermost self somehow. Maybe it's a sweater vest. Yeah. I don't relate to that one personally. I don't either. No. there are people
I
who
would
do
advise
because they wear
against
it.
For some reason. I just...
You're not here for the look?
No. No, I'm not.
What if their torso gets cold, their arms get hot?
Yeah. You know what? Then it seems like a very effective...
That's my best idea of why people...
fall wear.
Yeah, people who really want an extra torso layer.
Right, if they have easily overheating arms. That makes sense.
Maybe one day there'll be a story told about that.
I think we're telling one right
I think we are too. Yeah. My dad was really into sweater vests as part of my having more space for empathy about.
Yes. Did he have easily overheating arms?
I mean,
seems like it.
Yeah, that would. Yeah. That's my guess now is.
That's your big theory about your dad and the sweater vest.
In this moment, yeah, I'm like, I get the benefits. I also, people do...
That's going to be a good one to ponder.
Why people wear sweater vests. Yeah. That's the story takeaway from this podcast. Yeah. If you wear a sweater vest, please reach out and let us know. Yeah. Is it a heating question here?
We should title the podcast Storytelling and...
Do you wear sweater vests?
And do you... and the reasons why or why not somebody may wear a sweater vest. Lucy Hartman, storytelling, magic, religiosity, and sweater vests,
Yeah, someone at one moment was like, what would work for this sweater? No
arms, yeah. Just remove the arms. It would look great? Yeah. Let's just take the arms off of this vest and have an armless vest. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked your title suggestion.
Yeah.
I feel like religiosity and sweater vests actually feel pretty connected.
Yeah. I would say...
Mr. Rogers didn't. Did he wear a sweater? I feel like those were sleeved sweaters.
Oh.
Fact check, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, we need to do a fact check on that.
Another storyteller. Sweater vest or not. A reminder that is just the outside shell of the story. Yeah. If someone tells a story you still resonate with in any sort of way, them wearing or not wearing a sweater vest is...
Don't judge a book by its sweater,
Yeah.
Holiday expansion pack. Don't judge a book by its sweater vest.
Yeah, it might still have a story that you need to hear.
Yeah, true.
And on that note, there's a lot to ponder on. I'll be walking away from this podcast with.
You think?
I do. Yeah, I feel like a lot of helpful reflections about my why, about my what are my sweater vest-y preferences and how do I embrace those preferences as part of me.
Yeah.
To tie this to sweater vest again.
Well, what I guess to close it off, like what do you love? I think that's a good question. And I feel like it's a good way to end the podcast. And it can change all the time, But today, like what do you love?
I love questions. So I love that you asked that as a question. And I love love. I love feelings. Someone recently called me a feelings documentarian through things with the podcast, where I love the gift of someone sharing their perspective with me in a way that is quote unquote authentic, and the space, the security, the feeling, the whatever that can get set up that can hold spaces for people to share their real human experience. And I love getting to witness that and getting to be some part of sharing other people's and my own. And I love observing patterns also, and seeing the patterns and the connections between stories. I love getting to hear stories from people that I love and feel comfortable to really be fully honest with my perspective of their storytelling and say, oh, that reminds me of this or that thing you've shared before, or maybe those things are connected. And I love people doing that for me too.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, those are really beautiful things.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I would agree. I would echo everything you said. I love love. I love you. I love being here and doing this podcast. I love self-expression, and I love having safe spaces for us all to share. And I love trying to find the good things in a day that feels like a bad day. I really do love that. I love cleaning the house. I love my girlfriend and my family. I love the movie that I'm working on, Hi Pretty, and I love coffee. Yeah.
I love listing and hearing people list things they love.
I also love collecting notebooks wherever I go, and I love the new Harry Styles album.
Full circle.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast for Podcastukkah. I think it's going to be great. I think everybody's going to love it.
Thank you so much
for the beginning.
It is. Thank you. And shout out to On Air for you to thank you recorded for helping me let go of the rigidity of choosing the title and structuring everything so much beforehand.
Yeah, because we wouldn't have known about the sweater vest thing.
Precisely.
Dude. Sweater vests are important. Clickbait.
To sweater vests.
Yeah, to sweater vests.
Thank you again so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in, and thanks for being you.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end. Please check out the AnnieAltmanShow.com and also patreon.com/The Annie Altman Show if you're able and interested in donating $1 or more per month to these projects. Non-dollar ways to share value includes and is not limited to sharing anything, the podcast, any YouTube video, any blog post, any social media account, subscribing, following anywhere, rating or reviewing anything, sending any feedback or ideas, and or connecting me with people for the podcast or other projects you feel would enjoy this work. In my opinion, word of mouth is the only quote real advertising, so here I am using words from my mouth.